In this episode of Fish Home Refresh, my Salvini is cool as fuck, and she's built herself a new home. Alcatraz inmate update, including some beauties. What's up with that ugly bare-bone stand of mine? And a great pH mystery is solved. If you don't remember Sylvia, she's my 4 to 5 inch Salvini, which is a smaller but typically pretty aggressive Central American cichlid in San Quentin, my 10-foot American cichlid prison. She's one of the coolest fish I've ever known, but people talk about how terrifyingly mean theirs are. My Sylvia has ascended to a higher level than those other miscreants. She's actually pretty peaceful, and her moral compass has led her to defend the innocents of the tank, if you can call any of these guys innocents, to defend them against Kevin, the blue Texas cichlid, who's getting pretty big, by the way. He looks like he's about 6 inches now. When I got him, he was only about 2.5 to 3 inches, and that was only 4 months ago. Anyway, Kevin's an asshole to everyone, but he's afraid of Sylvia, and now Buck also. But she keeps him on the straight and narrow, although lately he's been getting a little less afraid of her, maybe because he's getting so big. Anyway, Salvinis tend to hang out toward the bottom of the tank, and they like to have a place to rest their weary heads. An apartment, a loft, a condo, or perhaps an underground lair. I noticed all the sand piled up in the front of the tank, and I wondered who the heck's doing the redecorating, because I never see him doing it. Then I noticed the big hole that didn't used to be there between these two big rocks. At first, I didn't see who was living there, and that's because it's Sylvia's and she only uses it once the lights are out, which means I can't really show you her in it because you wouldn't be able to see anything, but it's pretty cute how she has this lair underneath these huge rocks. She must be so proud. Sand everywhere too. I even built these stone sanctuaries just for this purpose, for the nut jobs to use, but they pretty much go unused except for the occasional temporary occupant. Across the divide, we have Alcatraz, the 8-foot African cichlid tank, which hasn't been in my videos much since San Quentin has been set up. These guys are getting pretty big, and some of them have really taken on some beautiful coloration. Just look at this Fusco. When I got him, he was a juvie, and he was pretty plain, but he's slowly turning into a real beauty. They start off with a pattern kind of like a juvie venustus, but when they're mature and feeling it, they really transform themselves into something special. Mine isn't quite there, but he's looking like he's walking the right road, if you know what I mean. When I talk about color, I always have to include my autopharynx bros, Antonio, Sergio, and Enrique, because they really are gorgeous haps. Just look at Sergio with those nice flowing fins and that swagger he's had since day one in this tank. Really a beautiful fish. He's what you call a Nova Blue Longnose, and if you recall, I have another longnose in the house as well, Stella Longnose. Everything on Stella is long, except for those short little legs. Just look at her, so cute. Hello, Stella. Alright, back to the autopharynx brothers. This here is Antonio, the Maramala, who didn't have any color at all forever, but now he's looking pretty darn sexy. I already showed you that he was getting some color, but I think he's getting even more now. Antonio is pretty peaceful. In fact, all of these guys are. All of these autopharynxes are pretty easy to get along with. I heard that the longnose might get really aggressive, but so far, really not much to report there. Maybe Antonio is prettier than Sergio now? What do you think? Has he surpassed him? And finally, the last of them, who in my opinion is also the first place winner for coloration in this tank, Enrique the Tetrastigma. He's been colored up for several months now, but lately he's showing even more color. Okay, he might not be the most colorful of all my fish, because my Strigatus, who needs a name by the way, let me know if you have any suggestions. He's extremely colored up since he thinks he's tank boss. He's hard to get a good shot of because he's always towards the back of the tank and everyone else wants their picture taken. Hello everyone. He's quite beautiful, but the reason I have Enrique at the top of the list is because of the odd colors you find in him. You don't see too many fish with these pinkish and purple hues in them. To me, there's nothing prettier in the African cichlid fish world, even though I'm pretty sure some of you might disagree. You have to agree though that he's at least more beautiful than the other two autos, right? You can at least give me that. His dorsal fin looks a little torn, I'm noticing, so there might have been some arguing going on at some point, but he's doing fine, so it must not be too serious. Eduardo is one of my Lake Victorian haps, called the Species 44 or thick-skin obliquidens. He had his dominant colors on pretty much from day one about a year ago, but in the past few months he's been colored down a little, and I'm not sure why. There isn't too much aggression going on in this tank, but he used to act a bit like a jerk at the time, and now he's more of a gentleman. Maybe he's just too tame now, and he thinks that being a bit on the pale side is more appropriate in this stage of his life journey. Check out Ferg the second. He's absolutely got no color at all, just like a silver guy, but that's not uncommon for furcicatas, which is what he is. They can get some color, but it's usually once they get larger, and maybe not even then. He's already 8 inches, but I mean when he gets larger than that. He could double in size, if you can believe that. He'll be a monster. Well, a very peaceful, affable monster. He keeps disappearing back behind the decor to some sort of primo sand to sift. I really can't believe that no one picks on him. He's so peaceful. You might think it's because he's so large, but I found that more aggressive Africans tend to notice larger ones more and go after them rather than the smaller ones, so I don't think that's it. So I don't know why no one picks on him, but that's cool that they don't. Oh, and by the way, that's why I always try to get fish about half the size of the current inmates when I add new fish to this yard. They go completely under the radar. Back to Ferg though. He's looking pretty good and he's extremely happy in here because there's all this sand to sift. My previous furcicata, Ferg II, didn't do much sand sifting at all, but this guy's all about it. Lately I've had some comments about the stand for San Quentin. Why would I spend so much money on a tank like this and not get a stand from Custom Aquariums that looks decent instead of this piece of shit? Okay, well first of all, settle down guys, it's not a bad stand. It's just the skeleton form. My stand isn't gonna stay like this. I still have to do all the finish work on it. I made my own stand for 2 reasons, and I think they're good reasons. I wanted to save a lot of money, which I did, and I wanted it to match all the other stands that I had made locally. It's gonna be beautiful. I'm just busy with everything else I have going on, and San Quentin's stand has remained in this stage for way too long. And guess what? It's gonna be there a while longer. I just need some time off to get this thing finished. One day it'll be there. Then you'll see.
Then you'll all see.
That brings me to my great pH mystery. I don't usually check all the pH in my tanks, but I do occasionally, and I recently decided to check the pH in Alcatraz, which was spot on at 8.2. Africans like that high pH. I have aragonite sand in my African cichlid tanks to act as a buffer to raise that pH naturally, and it works pretty well. But the aragonite can lose its power over time, so you want to monitor it and make sure it's still effective at raising that pH. And it was, but I also decided to check my non-African cichlid tanks to make sure they're closer to neutral like many of those fish like. And guess what I found out about my 180 gallon here? 8.2, just like my African tanks. Yikes! So I checked San Quentin, 8.2. Why the hell are all those tanks with no aragonite so high? I remember checking the tap and it was around 7.4 at the time. What's going on? Who's in charge here? Oh, I am. So it's up to me to figure out? Shit. So if the water coming out of my tap is different than what's in my tanks, and there's nothing in the tanks to change the pH, let's run an experiment. I'll check some tap water with my API Master Test Kit with the low pH test drops, straight out of the tap. It looks like it's at the high end of that range. When that happens, use the high range pH test drops to see if it's even higher. Which it possibly is, at either 7.4 or maybe 7.6. These charts are always so hard for me to tell the difference between the colors. Do you have that problem too? Anyway, lower than 8.2. So now I'm going to fill a test tube and let it sit overnight and then check it in the morning. And what do you know? It looks even higher than 8.2 to me. This exact color isn't on the chart, but I'd guess maybe 8.3? What the hell, right? So my theory is that the pressure from the water being in the pipes is changing the pH of the water coming right out of the tap. It initially lowers the pH, and then when it's free of that pressure, it slowly reverts to its normal pH, which is higher in my case. So testing the water straight out of the tap doesn't always give you an accurate reading of what will be in your tanks. I don't even need aragonite in my African cichlid tanks. Isn't that something? And the moment you've been waiting for, the end of the video. Let's call it a wrap.